Afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. This is your men's life coach, Rolando. And remember that one of the things that I've promised to you guys time and time again is that we are going to seek to have guests who is able to bring some, new insight to our podcast. This is the XY Spark podcast, the podcast for men. And one of the things that we do here on XY Spark is we seek to find men who can share their story, their journey, career, professional journey and personal journey. And today, I'm so excited to have with me Brian. Brian, I don't want to try to pronounce your last name because I don't want to mess it up. So he will probably announce it later. But Brian, welcome to the podcast. Please introduce yourself to the community, please.
Oh, Orlando, so good to be with you. And I love what I know of your vision with this podcast of encouraging men in their mental health and on their journey. My name is Brian Doerksen. The last name Doerksen has this D-O-E, which is from the old country, Dutch Germany would have been O with the little two dots on top, O with an umlaut, as they say
Okay,
in German.
okay.
But yeah, and I live in Abbotsford, British Columbia,
Hmm.
and I'm a songwriter, I'm a recording artist. Um, Canadians would, some Canadians would be more familiar. I've won a Juno for one of my records.
Mm.
I'm a
Hmm.
songwriting coach and
Okay.
mentor for other
Okay.
songwriters.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's
Wow.
and
Wow.
I'm the father of six children, including three with special needs with Fragile X syndrome. And
Wow.
I've been married to my wife Joyce for 40 years.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Guys, so you see, marriage, it's still possible to have long marriages, right? Thank you,
yep,
Brian. You see,
yep.
Brian has been married for 40 years. And, if I were to tell you guys how old I was when Brian got married, you'll guess my age. So I'm not going to do that. Right, but a father of six, including those that a few that have special needs. Wow, what a powerful Brian. I'm excited to see where our conversation is going to take us, right? So, Brian, I'd like to start off by just tell us a little bit, how did you get into the music business? What inspired that?
Well, it's an interesting, part of I think my DNA. So my grandfather, Peter Doerksen, was a mandolin player.
Mm-hmm.
And he fled Russia when the revolution happened about 100 years ago as a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
he suffered many traumatic, you know, it. When I hear some of the stories of what my grandpa went through, I can't almost even comprehend the brutality of that regime as that whole revolution was happening. And seeing members of his family murdered in front of him, seeing
Mm-hmm.
barely escaping with his life. So I think, and he ended up having a whole bunch of mental health struggles and eventually couldn't work when after short time after he was in Canada. But he
Mm-hmm.
played music to kind of, soothe his soul. And I think I got some of my love for stringed instruments from him. And then
Mm-hmm.
his eldest son is my dad, Harry Doerksen,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad is a singer. He's 88 and he's still singing strong.
Wow.
But when I was a teenager, I sometimes jokingly said, I don't want to be anything like my dad.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, led the singing at the church that I grew up in. And I was like, oh, what a boring thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
leading leading a
Yeah.
group of people singing a song together.
Yeah.
Of course, the irony is eventually that's kind of what I ended up doing myself. And I say I'm thankful I became more like my dad.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but so music is in my DNA. I just never dreamed that I would be able to make a living doing it, and I've made a
Mm-hmm.
living as a full-time songwriter musician for 35 years now.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
That's powerful. Brian, tell me a little bit, what has been your biggest achievement on this journey as a musician?
Well, I mean, there's certain markers that come, recently I was invited to be Canadian musical guest at the Coronation Prom in Royal Albert Hall in London, England, on the day that Charles was coronated. So they a whole symphony orchestra and a 300 voice choir, performed three of my songs that I was, my original songs. I've won a Juno Award, so there's been, and the Juno is funny because, most of my music is known more in the contemporary Christian gospel world.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember bringing my special needs son to school the morning
Mm-hmm.
after the Junos when I won.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the other moms and dads at the school gate, were like, "Hey, I saw you won a Juno last night, for your latest album."
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was like they just I'm kind of a shy, introverted person by nature. So, but they
Mm-hmm.
were like, "Oh, oh, that's what you do." Like sometimes people when you do music or the arts for a living,
Mm-hmm.
people can't figure out what it is you do. Like, do you just sit around all day and write songs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I go, well, actually, songwriting is about 10% of what my time is spent doing. And tell me, it's a very uh, enjoyable, albeit sometimes frustrating when you can't seem to figure out how to wrap up a chorus or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's an inspiring part, but most of what I do, I'm sure a lot of men out there can relate to this, where you get into a certain career and a certain focus because you love something. You're
Mm-hmm.
good at mechanical or you're good at something, but you end up spending a chunk of your work life doing things that are necessary for administration and for organization and for
Mm-hmm.
relationship and all those things, but you have this little slice that's the very essence of what you love. So
Mm-hmm.
so that there's been some markers, some significant event invitations. We're having this conversation, and in a few days, I get on a plane and I fly to Germany, where a whole orchestra and choir has arranged my Christmas album, and we're going to be in this beautiful stone cathedral just in the shadows of Salzburg, Austria,
Mm-hmm.
and the place will be packed and I will walk out and I'll sing my songs, and so you get those moments where
Yes.
the kind of special high moments, but there's a lot of moments in being a musician and a songwriter and recording artist that's hidden, that's quiet,
Mm-hmm.
that nobody sees, and you have no idea whether it's going to work.
Wow, wow. Now that's funny. Now, guys, did you hear what Brian just said? Brian said that he's an introvert, yet he's a musician.
Hmm.
Actually, a musician that has, won a Juno, has been in front of hundreds of people, if not thousands, but yet he's an introvert. So I can't imagine what it would be if he was not an introvert. So, Brian,
Well,
kudos to
yeah.
you, man. That's powerful. Brian, what would you say have been some of your most challenging moments on this journey?
Mm. Wow. I mean, yeah. So one of the things, and you're just talking about the fact when you're an introvert, but you have a public career, um, and the aspect of the public part of performance and everything. I remember, like, when I was a teenager, my greatest fear was that I'd have to get up in front of a group of people and speak. And so I've eventually turned into I lead workshops, I give keynote addresses at conferences and stuff. But that happened slowly because I could hide in the music and I could lose myself in the music when I'm on stage, and then eventually I can come out of the music and talk to people. but it starts
Mm-hmm.
with losing myself in the thing that I love,
Okay.
that brings me life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but that's not always the easiest thing, and it's draining, like as an introvert to do something public, like when we're touring and we're doing in a different city every day, and we're getting up in front of, let's say 500 to 800 people a night, and then you're meeting, doing all of that, and then, so that gets draining.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I think having the opportunity to do music around the world and to do what I love, and then finding out, the first time we found out that our first son had Fragile X syndrome and would require care and support for the rest of his life. And you get this, well, a whole bunch of feelings, the weight of the future,
Mm-hmm.
the that mentally you think I have to care for and support my son for the rest of his life in a way that is very hands-on. And when I die, who will do that? Who will
Mm-hmm.
care for my son like I can care for my son? So the
Mm-hmm.
weight of that news, I remember that day when I found out, was almost soul crushing, just because of the implications of it. And then it started me on a journey of having to constantly weigh the cost of doing what I love, like taking an invitation to go to another part of the world to do an event, and figuring out all of the layers of who would care for my son. And but in a way, having my two boys with Fragile X syndrome, and then one of our daughters who's quite impacted by it as well, um, has shaped me in ways that I think also inform and shift the art that I make, the musical art that I make. It makes me care more about giving and receiving love. It makes me care more about being emotionally healthy and giving space for the difficult emotions of sadness and grief to be expressed in me and in my music, because I recognize um, that this is part of their gift in my life, that my sons have given me a great gift, and that is helping me deal with those things and slow me down a little bit. I could have, so to speak, gotten further with my career, my probably made a bit more money, had a little bit more influence, but at what cost? I have to trust that. I guess in one way to say it is the universe knows what it's doing when it gives me these two boys. And in, spiritually, people can say God knows what he's doing, but I I don't blame God or the divine or creator for the hard things in my life. I just think it's all part of the package of like living in the universe that we live in, which is a mixture of incredible beauty, incredible beauty and joy and relationship, and then incredible, I don't know, even brutality from some of nature and some people who mistreat other people. Like we live in this incredible paradox, don't we, of so many amazing gifts and then so many things that are so hard. Um, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm
Wow.
answering your question.
Brian,
I'm
listen,
just
man.
talking about how I process.
Brian, what a sobering thought that you just shared, and you said so many powerful things. And I want to just go back to what you said earlier. The first time when you got that news, or you recognize that your child, you know, has a disability, how did that impact your mental health? And you
Mm,
know, what did you do to preserve that? Because there are some persons who, a news like that can be so devastating that they fall into depression. They fall into, as you say, they blame God, they blame the universe. They think, why me?
mhm,
How did you do it? I mean, not once, not twice, okay? But
mhm,
three of your six children actually, you say they have, special needs, so to
mhm,
speak. How have
mhm.
you kept your mental health in all of that?
Oh boy, that's a great question, and I'll share a few things. But it's an ongoing journey. First of all, it's um, and because it's not like something like a checklist that you can check off. Okay, there's three things on this checklist. Now I'm going to do these three things, and it's all going to be fixed. Just yesterday, our son, who is cared for by a wonderful Nigerian family here in Abbotsford that lives up the road. We have one of our special needs sons lives with us full time, and one lives with this family up the road, and then he comes home every Sunday. And, I still have to care for them in ways sometimes with toileting issues and have to go into the bathroom with them and help them use the toilet and all of these dynamics, right? And there was an incident yesterday that I had to clean up, and I remember thinking that the inner tug of war, like I can't believe I still have to do this, but at the same time it's a privilege to care for my son because he needs help. He's not able, his mental abilities does not literally give him the ability to do some basic tasks that everybody can do without thinking about them. And so here I am, and there's a tenderness and a an intimacy that I get to share with my son that not a lot of fathers get to share with their sons because their sons are able-bodied and able-minded, and they just, yeah, dad, that's cool. I know you care for me, kind of like, you know, and,
Mhm,
and there's
mhm,
no cool factor in like having to accompany your son into the washroom to help him with his toileting,
mhm,
but it becomes part of your bond because they know that you care for them in ways that even they may have enough awareness to go, this could be embarrassing, but they need the care, so they're grateful for it, right? I mean,
mhm,
it's hard because,
mhm,
oh, and a lot of these things happen without words. They just happen with a look, with a
mhm,
touch, with a,
mhm,
and
mhm,
that's one of our things with as men, we're not always words people, though I'm a bit of a words guy, but you recognize there's a lot of communication that you can do that you don't need to say anything. You just need to communicate with your eyes.
mhm,
But so this is ongoing, right? So this situation, so if I go right back to the beginning when I found out the news, and
mhm,
this like it's like the first wave of grief
mhm,
hits you like you're on the beach, and you've turned around and all of a sudden an extra tall wave comes along and just knocks you down. Like you
mhm,
just feel like you just got the bit of news came, okay, Brian, your son has Fragile X syndrome. It means he's going to have autistic behaviors. It means his IQ is going to remain at a place where he's never going to be able to fully speak or write. He's never going to be able to hold a job. And it's like this wave just hits you like boom and knocks you over.
mhm,
And you're like reeling. You're like this. And then I think, okay, what can I do in response to this kind of news?
mhm,
And I think there's a number of things. One is I have a faith
Mm-hmm.
that I'm held and loved by the divine.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have, by having a faith, you could also feel a little bit abandoned in that
Mm-hmm.
moment because
Mm-hmm.
you have been given something that you feel like is bigger than you can carry by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of going like, what gives?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're lifting
Mm-hmm.
your eyes to the heavens, like what gives here? Like what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And then you recognize, oh, that's right. We live in an incredibly complex universe
Mm-hmm.
that there is this constant, beauty and brutality that I talked about before happening, and there is implications of a universe that has freedom and I don't know, even like the long-term results of environmental issues and everything, like what ultimately causes, we don't know totally in this case what causes part of the X chromosome. I love the name of your podcast, by the way, XY
Yes.
Spark. And
Thank you,
I
Brian.
because I've thought a lot about X and Y,
Yes.
having kids
Mm.
with fragile X
Mm-hmm.
syndrome. And when
Mm-hmm.
you have a male with fragile X, they only have one X, as your
Mm.
podcast title says, which
Wow.
means so my wife, who's a carrier, and we didn't know that when we got married, she has two X's. And
Mm-hmm.
one of her X chromosomes is impacted by fragile X and the other isn't. So she has
Mm.
no noticeable disabilities. Let me
Mm-hmm.
tell you, she's a smart lady. She's a beautiful lady. She's a
Mm-hmm.
talented lady.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but we didn't know, right?
Wow, guys and guys, I want to put a marker in here and listen to how this brother who's been married for 40 years is describing his wife. Okay, guys, take notes and don't miss it. Don't miss it. Okay, Brian, continue.
Yeah, and so coming back to the wave that hit me on the
Yeah.
day of the first news, I
Mm-hmm.
knew one of the things I knew is that I had to turn to my partner,
Mm-hmm.
my wife at that time, we had been just married like 6, 7 years. We
Mm-hmm.
got married at 19, so we were really young when we got married. We were high school sweethearts. We've dated since we were 15.
Mm-hmm.
We just knew we were a good fit together, and we're opposites in so many ways as it
Mm-hmm.
works. But I remember, because there's a lot of men who get this kind of news, and it actually uh, can be one of the contributing factors to their marriage not making it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Mm-hmm.
just too overwhelming. And
Mm-hmm.
then blame can start happening, and then this and that, which of course, I mean, my wife is a carrier of this condition, but we didn't know it. It's not her fault. It's
Mm-hmm.
not her intention. So I
Mm-hmm.
knew that I needed to turn to her and say, let's weep together for this bad news, and then
Mm-hmm.
let's figure out how we're going to walk this out in a way um, that we carry each other, that
Mm-hmm.
we find a way. And around that time, one of the decisions we made was that from that point on, we were going to. It's interesting. Even though our child was born who had more needs than an than a child without Fragile X, we were going to make a bigger priority on our marriage and our friendship and our relationship. We were going to have a weekly date night to keep on celebrating our relationship. We
Mm-hmm.
were going to have a quarterly, night or 2 nights away, just the two of us, just a
Mm-hmm.
little romantic getaway. And we would
Mm-hmm.
have a yearly 1 to 2 weeks away. And now you think about what we had to do in order to arrange care for our special needs children in order for us to pull it off. But see, sometimes if it's a priority, you just make it work,
Mm.
right? Okay, these are the, as to quote an old Stephen Covey term from what was it, the 7 habits of highly effective people, you put the big rocks in place first. Like
Mm,
you put, so this was one of them, so this is how and just doing that helped my mental health. Because why? Because I had something to look forward to
mm,
always,
mhm,
every week,
mhm,
every quarter,
mhm.
every year.
Ooh,
I knew I had things to look forward. I think something about, and this is again, I talked about how when the wave hit me,
mhm, mhm,
there was the weight of the future.
mhm,
So now, what's there to look forward to but a lifetime of care and service? Now, you can look at that, of course, a couple of different ways. You can look
mhm,
at it as all bad,
mhm,
or you can look at it as privilege.
mm,
Oh, I've been entrusted by the universe with this child who has these
mhm,
needs.
mhm,
I've been entrusted because obviously maybe I'm capable of doing it. So maybe there's going to be good in this, not just for the person I'm caring for, but for me as well, you know. But it's that battle, that mental battle between the weight of the future, which could be negative, and then also, like I just said, like having things to look forward to.
mhm,
And then, of
mhm,
course, as we
mhm,
continue to learn the power of living in the moment, of
mm,
just saying, okay, here and now, what's in front of me?
mm,
And if it's my son in front of me that needs something, trying to push him away is not going to help my mental health. What's going to help my mental health is attending to what he needs, making sure he's okay, and then returning to whatever it is I wanted to do or focus on, right?
mm.
And not see that interruption as a negative, but as a way of staying living in the moment.
Wow.
And
Well, Brian, I'm so happy that you came because, one of my listeners reached out to me and asked me to say something about dealing with that. And, it's so, and I think I told you this, it's so interesting that here we are, and you're speaking about it from the lens of not having one or two kids, but
mm-hmm,
three.
mm-hmm,
All right, and still maintained a healthy marriage for 40 years.
mm-hmm,
All right, and you're still here celebrating that, and you said some powerful things about having something to look forward to. And guys, don't miss it. Have something to look forward to, attending to the needs of that child in the moment so that you can go and attend to what you need to do for yourself later. All these things are so potent because that's
mm-hmm.
self-care, that's,
Yeah,
setting goals, that's being
yeah,
aware, right? That's practicing awareness in the
mm-hmm,
moment, focusing on what's there in front of you. That's being mindful.
mm-hmm,
Brian didn't use all those terms. I'm putting them in there so you understand that psychologically, these are powerful ways that as men, we need to pay attention,
mm-hmm.
right? These things doesn't just happen, guys. It takes a lot
Yeah.
of intentionality. So, Brian, amazing that you were able to put that out there today for all of my listeners, all the men out there to recognize it. Brian, let me ask you this. You're a musician. You have a special needs child, all that. But what do you do for self-care?
Mm. Well, I mean, well, one of the things I do for self-care is I spend, some quality time with my beautiful, amazing wife, that's part of self-care, like, and even just giving myself permission to doing that, like when there's still work to do. In fact, this last week, um, I've been just in it's a busy season. We had a developing an online music special. I'm working on my next album, which is an album of love songs about long love, staying in love for a lifetime.
Mhm.
Anyway, so there's lots always to do. And my wife walks in the room a few days ago and goes, Brian, it's our date night, have you finalized plans? And I said, well, I have an option or two of a restaurant we can go to. And she goes, I just booked us for a night away at at our favorite hotel, and let's go. And I'm looking at her, and partly I start thinking, oh, but I've got to do this and this and this until, and it was like, and then there's a little voice goes off, you idiot, like just say yes and reschedule what you need to reschedule, because this is like, you talk about self-care. Like, here's my wife. She just wants to spend some time with me and go for walks and get me out of, so that's part of it. Um, I think I love walking and hiking, not like crazy hikes, but I like going on like 1 to 2 hour hikes into the forest, along mountain trails or along a river. And I don't bring headphones, or because I live in the world of listening to music and analyzing it and helping songwriters and everything. So when I go, so self-care for me is get out into nature with no props of any kind and just let the natural world wash over me, in
Yes,
sound,
yes,
in smell, in whatever is happening.
yes.
Um, and then I, you know, my creative, I make a weekly appointment with myself, you know, for songwriting. And I did this because years ago I realized that the way I made a living was through songs being written, royalties, this kind of thing. And it was always the one of the last things I had time to do. And I realized, but when I go and sit at the piano with no agenda, just to be and just to start playing some melodies and see what comes, I feel joy. I feel energy.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
feel, you know, like possibility. So
Yes.
I make a 3 hour appointment with myself every Friday morning. It's just the way my schedule works.
Mhm.
And I tell you, that's one of my favorite 3 hours in the week. Remember, now I said I'm an introvert, so it also makes sense.
Mhm.
My phone's off. I have nothing else but just me and the piano and a notepad making
Wow.
notes of like lyrical thoughts. So I think it's a combination of those things. I I I make time to read, and I read both to learn out of curiosity. My dad was a science teacher, so I love learning about how things work and philosophy and all of that stuff. But I also read for pleasure. I usually have a novel that you know, I'm reading. I'm just,
Mhm.
just for example, I'm about to fly to Munich, Germany, for an event there, but I just bought a novel which is called Munich by Robert Harris, and it's about the meetings that Hitler and Chamberlain had and the setting up of World War II, but it takes you behind the scenes. So I like
Mhm.
reading historical fiction like that stuff.
Wow,
So
wow,
yeah.
wow. So, guys, you see, I'm blown away just listening to Brian and hearing Brian's journey. How he got into music, what he does for self-care. He already answered one of my questions. How has he happened to preserve being married for 40 years? And he made mention of it, setting priorities and recognizing, hey, wait a minute. It's okay to reschedule that, but this you can't reschedule. Like, go for a date with the wife, make her know that she's still the most important person in your world, right? And
Mhm.
those things are so important. And guys, take notes here, right? I would put Brad on the spot, but I won't, because it's fair to say this, that to be married for 40 years takes work, right? And
Yes,
guys,
yes.
if you don't want to do the work, I guarantee you're not going to get the results, right? I'm not going to ask Brian about challenges in marriages and all that because obviously there's no marriage that doesn't have that,
Oh,
right?
can I say one
Yes,
thing about this? This
yes,
is kind of funny because about a year ago, my wife would start like if we would meet somebody brand new, she would say, "Hey, everybody, this is my husband, Brian. He's my sixth husband." And they would look at her like, "What?" He's
yeah,
like, "You're sixth. You've been married six times." And then she
yeah,
just laughs. She goes, "No, no, no. He's my sixth husband. Like when we were 19, he was my first husband." Right?
yes,
And he's an artist. So about every 7, 8 years, he changes. My first husband had hair, you know.
yes,
She
very
laughs.
good.
Look at my, my sixth husband doesn't have any hair.
Yes,
My second husband started writing songs. My second husband started being a father. My third, and she can describe a little bit.
wow,
But
wow.
what I realized when she said that the first time, I thought, this is also one of the secrets to long relationship and marriage is you find ways to recommit to the person that your spouse and partner is becoming, and they find the same with you. We as men, we're not going to be exactly the same
Mhm.
over our whole lifetime. We'll go through phases, we'll go through
Most of
seasons.
us
We
wish we were, eh?
Yeah.
Most of us wish that we were still producing the same amount of testosterone. We
Yeah,
still look chiseled. We still had our
yeah,
six packs. Some of us
yeah,
only have
yeah,
one packs now, right?
yeah, yeah.
We
If
still
that.
had hair. Most of us, and sometimes, Brian, it is in us fighting against that why we become a little bit out of sync, why our
Yeah.
mental health deteriorates
not
because
not living not living in the season we're in, and so I have to be okay with
Brian,
being
can
her
you say that
sixth
again?
husband.
Live in the season. Guys,
Yeah,
listen, man.
yeah.
That's a mic drop, I don't know if you guys are able to spot mic drop when you see it, but that's a mic drop. And it's so powerful that as men, we have to learn to live in the season that we're in. So, Brian, listen, man, I'm going to be quoting that. So, and I like to
uh,
credit the source of my
uh,
information. That's powerful. That's
yeah.
powerful.
And it's just, and there will be another season to come. I mean, and it's interesting because of our kids' condition, I may never become a grandparent, where most of my friends are becoming grandparents because our daughters, even the ones that aren't special needs, are fragile X carriers like my wife.
Mhm.
So, and of our four daughters, one is married and she's been married for 12 years and she hasn't had a child, and she may not have a child because the likelihood of her child being special needs, and that's their decision to make. But like most men who have children eventually become grandparents.
Mhm.
That may never happen for me unless something surprising happens or one of them adopts or whatever, but that's okay because it's the life we have. So what's next? What's husband number 7 going to be like for my wife? I don't
Mhm.
know. She
Mhm.
doesn't know, but we're just going to stick it out together. We're going to find out together, and if we need to make some adjustments in our relationship because of physical challenges or whatever, or work changes, we'll figure it out, right?
Mhm.
And we will trust that we'll have what we need when it's needed. And I
Mhm.
think, sometimes that's one of the great ways that having a deep taproot of faith can help us with. But I think even people that wouldn't say that they're spiritual or Christian or whatever religion, you can also just live in this openness that says, the universe will provide what I need when I need it. I'm going to stay curious, and I'm not going to let my life be ruled by fear, of what the future is going to happen or what's going to happen in the world. There will be hard things that are coming in our world. Um, and we may be afraid when they come, but we've made it through previous things. We've made it through together. We've made it through by trusting, you know, that we'll have what we need when we need. And we're going to make it through the next season, you know, and so
Yes.
we carry on. We carry on.
Yes. Wow, that's powerful. Listen, man, Brian, I mean, guys, I'm telling you, I'm just soaking in these powerful life experiences that Brian is sharing. And Brian, just I could not, and I cannot let you go before I ask you these last two questions. Number one is, what's the secret to your success? If you would say, if you would share 2 or 3 points with our listeners, especially the men out there, what would 2 or 3 things that you would say to them, guys, this is important. And number two, my second question, Brian, is, how does someone, access your work, your music? If someone would like to learn to sing, for example, how would they connect with you and all that piece?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, when you talk about success, I always feel like that the only success that is sustainable is when we are being genuinely ourselves and in that lane that is uniquely ours to run in, right? So I would say the main secret is to keep on saying no to the imposter, saying no to that that oh, in order to be really successful, I have to be, and then you look outside of yourself and you see somebody in your field, whatever that field of your career or your path is, and you go, oh, look at what they're doing. Look at how they succeeded. Look at those awards they got. Look at how much money they're making. And that's all imposter kind of speak in your head because and let me tell you, as a musician, this is huge, right? Because there's always hundreds and thousands of people who are selling more music, winning more awards, being on, there's more, 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 more. The secret to success isn't more. It's not out there. It's in here. It's in our own soul, our own heart, there was this little phrase that Jesus used once. He says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? Some people think about that as like it's like about heaven or hell. I don't think he's talking about heaven or hell. I think he's talking about losing yourself. Like you're trying to gain all of these things that are out there,
mhm,
but you lose yourself. You lose your soul. You don't know who you are anymore. You've become this shell because and even in the fields of music that I've worked in, I always feel often outside of the camp. Like I don't tend to write the kind of music that's really hip and popular at the time. I just
mhm,
write the music that tells my story, that shares my heart, and it's
mhm,
resonated with enough people that I've made a living.
mhm,
And I don't need more. I have enough. I'm just going to write the next song that I want to write. I'm going to record the next album that I want to make. And that, in this case, is an album called Love for a Lifetime. And it's about, I say the world is filled with songs that are about falling in love, but there's not a whole lot of songs about staying in love. And I write for gaps. I mean, that's maybe another way to answer your question. How would I counsel men to be successful? Find the gaps. Like, don't imitate other people. Where are the gaps? Where can you take your unique gifting and perspective and find a gap where that gap would be filled by you just being you and serve there, go there, find the gap.
mhm.
Um, yeah, and if if some of the men are out there and they hear this and they're curious to hear some of my music, it's very easy. It's just briandoerksen.com, DOERKSEN.com, and you'd be curious. I think I'm pretty excited about this next album project I've got, Love for a Lifetime. The first single will drop on Valentine's Day. 2025. And and these are songs written about staying in love over a lifetime, and we're pretty excited to share them.
Well, powerful. Listen, guys, man. Listen, Brian. Thank you so much, man, for giving us your time and sharing all these powerful nuggets. And guys, listen, man, I hope that you picked up something powerful from Brian's interview because I did. I picked up some powerful stuff and one of the things that Brian said that I can't forget. And I tell you, I'm going to be, crediting the source for that. Brian said, number one, stay in your lane, find that gap, right? Brian also said, celebrate your authenticity, okay?
Mhm.
And recognize that. He spoke about self-care and all those things that you need to be doing and understand that. He also talks about, hey, remember, and this is my favorite piece, is that celebrate where you are, right? He said his wife said, hey, this is my sixth husband, he went through all these stages, but he had learned how to stay within that space where he's at and celebrate being in that space. Guys, listen, I'm excited. And we are going to have this interview up. You can go back and listen to it. Brian, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. And we want to chat with you again for sure, right? So please, Brian, know right now that you have automatically become a part of the XY Spark family. All right.
Mm.
So connect with us if you need us, you know where to find us. But I want to leave you guys with this. And as you know, at XY Spark, our mantra is this: personal development is not an event, it's a lifestyle. And here we had someone that we interviewed today who shared that in practical ways, that because of the lifestyle choices that he has been making in his life, it has helped him to stay married for 40 years. It has helped him to have a successful career as a musician. It has helped him to continue to be a successful and happy person in spite of the fact that he has three children who have special needs. It has helped him to continue to have vibe and energy about life. He has learned to celebrate his authenticity, function within the gap, and be content with what he has as a human being. And he has also alluded to the reality that having some form of connection with a higher power, God, spirituality, also has been an important part of his journey as he continues to share himself with the world. Brian, want to say to you all the best going forward. Enjoy that trip, and we look forward to talking with you again. In the meantime, this is your boy, your men's life coach Rolando here next by Spark. We will talk to you guys again real soon. Keep safe and do have a happy holidays until we meet again next time.